All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with a very special guest, one of my favorite wrestlers ever. You guys know him as Brock Hardy, and I know him as Houdini because the dude, I mean, if you've watched Brock wrestle ever, like I promise you, there's many times where I'm like, oh man, we gave that one up. And we don't. That is literally his ability. Like when you think you got this guy, somehow he comes out. So I'm with Brock. Brock, what's up, dude? Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me here, man. I'm really excited. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. So I mean, we're gonna get into wrestling, and I personally named you Houdini because it's insane what you do in a wrestling match. And we're gonna talk about that, and I want to get into kind of maybe, were you born without ligaments or something, here in a bit. But there's a lot of stuff I want to get to before that because everybody sees you as a wrestler. Everybody knows Brock, and they kind of, stud, this, and this, and they have their thoughts on you as a wrestler because we've seen that. But I want to know before the wrestling, like, where'd you grow up? How's the family life? Who are you as little Brock? And those type of things.
Yeah. So I kind of have an interesting, upbringing in a sense. So I'm from Brigham City, Utah.
Yep.
Tiny little town, just an hour north of Salt Lake, about 20 minutes from the Idaho border.
Okay.
And I'm actually not even from that city. I live outside of that city on a dairy farm with my family, as well as all of my cousins for around the same age.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up, how many were on the farm?
I mean, I think I have about like 30-ish cousins, and like I would say at that time, because I'm the youngest of all my cousins.
Wow.
There was probably 16 still working on the farm together.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe tell me a little bit. Is there multiple houses? Do you live in one house? What's going on?
Yeah. So I live on the end of the street, and then my dad's next oldest brother, because my dad's the youngest of his siblings. His next oldest brother is the next house, and then the next oldest brother, and then the oldest brother. They all live on the same street, and then we're like, a block away from the farm.
Yeah.
And then his sisters, my aunts, they had sons, and they worked on the farm as well, and they are all within, a 2-3 mile radius of the farm as well.
So it's a dairy farm, and you guys all worked at a dairy farm.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit familiar with dairy farms. I mean, out in Indiana where we're from, we have dairy farms as well. That's hard work.
Yeah.
Did you grow up like working hard on the farm, or were you the baby and they're like, Brock, protecting type stuff?
I definitely got protected more than my my cousins, where I was the youngest, so I didn't, I wasn't as needed for labor.
Yeah.
But it was a 2,000 head care of cows, so
jeez,
it was a big operation. So I didn't do a lot of milking. I did a lot more field work and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't get big and strong like the farmers you see out here in the Midwest, because I wasn't lifting hay bales. I was just using a tractor to lift hay bales.
Yeah. Smarter, not harder. I get it. But I mean, farm work in general, regardless if it's whatever you're doing, it's hard. I mean, there's a certain structure and hours and stuff like that. Do you feel like that you were raised in a pretty structured environment?
Oh yeah. Yes and no. My family is not a very structured family, and so there was a certain level of structure, and but I think it was more that we were structured in the sense of we had a job to do, and you got the job done, and then you could move on, sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you're on cousins, right? So I grew up with cousins. I mean, I tell people all the time, it's like, my cousins and I were quite a bit different just in personality types, but we were all very competitive. But growing up, we were also redneck, wild. So a part of that is why I became who I am, and I loved it. It was probably, I would argue, it was one of the best upbringings ever, because my parents would get together with their siblings and we would just play all day long. And usually it was very physical stuff. That made me, in some sense, kind of tough. Were you getting beaten up? What is that? What made you kind of tough?
Yes, like I said, I was the youngest, and so I got my butt kicked every single day. I mean, so I was ranging from cousins that are literally, I think, 33 years older than me. Is the oldest one.
Wow.
And I'm the youngest, and
that's an age gap.
Yeah, they would kick my butt, and then on top of that, just like you said, so they would get a random hobby that they'd be obsessed with, right?
Yeah.
So I'm 10. The next oldest, is 12, and the next oldest after that is like 15, 16.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we're going to skateboarding now.
Yeah.
We don't have any concrete where we live, but we're out there on like the little someone's driveway trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then, we're into dirt biking now. And so I'm obsessed with dirt biking. So it's kind of a lot of just like, I just wanted to do what they were doing.
That's cool.
And so I was kind of at the benefit because I was getting to do it at a younger age.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So are you competitive early? Is it? Are you just want to be as good as everybody else?
Yes. So my cousins, I think we did like a stat count. I want to say of like the 15 that wrestled, we have a total of like 22 state titles between us.
Wow.
There was a bunch of two-timers, a bunch of state finalists, and so we were just big into wrestling. And I remember being a little kid, about 7 years old, and watching my cousin win his second state title. I remember being like, that's going to be me.
Wow.
I'm going to be like that.
So it's a family thing. Wrestling's a family thing. Then did you start wrestling early? It's like 7 or before that?
Like 3 or 4.
Oh, okay. So you grew up, like your first memory is wrestling.
Yeah, eat, sleep, and wrestle, essentially.
Yeah, for literally. So were you getting into the wrestling a little bit now? Were you good fast?
I mean, I was, I would say I was good fast, right? Like, I was a regular, from 4 to 8, every kid is just, they're rolling around out there. It's just daycare, aggressive daycare.
Yeah, for sure.
But when I was like 8 years old, I wrestled at Reno Worlds. Like I was just traveling once again at the benefit because my brother was wrestling at a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a kids division. My dad will bring me along and throw me in it. Gotcha. And I remember being 8 years old, getting my butt kicked by Braxton Amos, who at the time was like a phenom. And I was like, okay, I'm, whatever. And he was beating me in mid-match. I'm like, actually, I think I know how to do this wrestling thing. And then I ended up losing the match, but it was like close, and came back and took third.
Wow.
And so it was like kind of like that was like the first click. And so then
what was it? What that clicked? I mean, can you articulate what it was? I mean, was it just a thought process? And if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you see it a lot with like you see a wrestler and you're like, well, I mean, like skill for skill, that guy is just as good as the best guy.
Yeah.
But there's a certain thing that clicks in your head that it's like, oh, I understand now how to not just, wrestle, but how to win and how to like put all of the different things together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally the meme, I understand it now. Like it kind of like that's kind of how it felt for me. And like even now I'll have like moments for that in a position, right? Like I don't understand this, and then all of a sudden it just clicks and you're like, oh, I now understand this certain aspect, even though it's hard to explain.
Yeah, I get that. Do you feel like that is just time on the mat? Do you feel like there's a certain amount of practices? I mean, what is it that maybe the key for that? Yeah,
I think that there's definitely a certain level of like time and confidence that comes with it, right? Kind of like the more time you spend enveloped in the problem or enveloped in the situation, the more you're going to become comfortable with it and be able to figure it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's life, right? The more we put ourselves in circumstances, the better we get at it, for sure. We talked about a little bit of it, but in general, I mean, you're probably in clubs, you're in these things. What do you think led to your success like early on, and maybe like as a kid, middle school, high school? What was it? Was it just being tough, being disciplined, being athletic? What was your keys?
Yeah, I think I was just I benefited so much from the situation that I was raised in.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to, my high school is one of the best high schools for wrestling in the state, and so got to be there, got to be near them, and then I got to fall around all my cousins and my brother, who are all good at wrestling, and get these opportunities young.
Yep.
And then, there's a certain level of like being the youngest, I got my butt kicked a lot. And so I learned to be so comfortable with failure that it made it so every time I failed, instead of like being detrimental, it was like, okay, let's try again, sort of thing.
Gotcha.
And so then with immense opportunity, the right mindset, and maybe some God-given talent of being flexible and being able to like pick up wrestling moves, it just kind of clicked.
Yeah, all that makes sense. So I'm assuming you have a pretty good You got good fast. So you had a good youth program, middle school program, high school program. When did you start kind of winning the big tournaments, and how does that look?
Yeah, I think like the first. I mean, in the West Coast, it's kind of weird because we don't have the same level of big tournaments to win.
Yeah.
So I like won Reno Worlds when I was 12 and under, I think.
Okay.
And that was big for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But, you know, we would go to like schoolboy duels and I would do really well. But once again, like Utah wasn't getting able to duel these other teams because we weren't in the gold bracket for most time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say middle school is when I really started to win big matches and kind of like, in a way, you know, be kind of recognized.
Yeah, get on like the national scene a little bit. What's your high school career look like? How do you do?
I'm a 4-time state champ in Utah, which doesn't mean as much as other states. And wow, I mean, we would go to like folk style nationals.
Yeah.
In Iowa, and I won it twice when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I took third. No, I won it 3 times. No, I took third, first, and then I injury defaulted out my junior year, and then won it my senior year.
Gotcha.
And then Fargo, I was a 6-time All-American.
Wow.
I went 3 times, so double All-American each year.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you're definitely making the noise now, you know, you're hitting the Midwest and people are like, we know who this guy is. So that leads me kind of into the, you know, the recruitment process, you know, well, before that you go on mission. Okay. Give me that story. I mean, you know, a little bit about, you know, your faith background and, you know, why you chose to do that. And what that was like. I know you've told that story, you know, on other podcasts or in other areas, but I think it's important for people to understand that you can take that gap if you feel called to do it and still have success. Some people think, if I miss it now, you know, I'm not going to have it. Did it benefit you? Kind of those things.
Yeah. So, you know, in the community, in the church of, you know, that I'm a part of, it's, you know, you're not obligated to go on a mission, and you're, you know, there's no mandatory, but there is a calling to do it.
Sure.
And, you know, I was raised watching all my cousins once again do it and watch my brother do it and hearing stories from their missions and stuff. And so I always wanted to do it. I got good at wrestling, and then it got hard to make the decision because,
Yeah.
you know, you're only young and good at wrestling once.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of a risk of whether or not to do it. And I had people in my ear telling me not to do it.
Really?
And so, you know, making the decision kind of just like came down to the point that I was like, you know what? I'm only good at wrestling because of him.
Yeah.
You know, if I am meant to do this and I sacrifice it to do something for him,
Yeah.
if it's meant to work out, it'll work out, right?
Yeah.
And so it just kind of came down to that decision of, you know, I have faith that if this is the right thing, it'll work out in the end.
Yeah.
And making the decision was easy at that point.
Mm-hmm. So where do you go in if you're able to talk about that, where do you go and what do you do?
Yeah. So you fill out essentially kind of like a job, you know, like a
Resume
yeah. kind of thing. Like, and then on top of that, they kind of ask you questions like, hey, are you willing to learn a new language? Are you willing to leave the country? And I was like, yes.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, for sure.
I want to do something new and cool, right?
Yeah.
And so they go, they pray on it, and they, you know, kind of break it down, and they go, okay, I think he's going to go to wherever. And for me, it was Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Okay.
Specifically the Rio North mission.
Yeah.
Which was from Copacabana up to the city 2 hours north of Rio called Macaé.
Okay.
And so you're called to the mission. You go for like a 6-week training cycle to learn how to speak the language. You learn nothing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, hi, how are you? Whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So you go to that little 6-week thing, and they send you out to the mission field, and then really you're just you and one other person, possibly living with 2 other people, but every single day you're just you and one other person. Free roam a little bit in your little areas. Like, they don't, I wasn't all over Rio at one time. It was like, oh, you go to this little city, right? Like, oh, if you're called to the Omaha, Nebraska mission, you could be in Lincoln specifically,
right
near this area sort of thing.
Okay. And do you get to wrestle anytime? No. So you're off.
I did jiu-jitsu one time, and we have a mission president who's supposed to, like, you know, make rules as well as
Yeah.
like talk to us, lead us, whatever. Mission president heard and said, don't do that ever again. He's like, if you break a leg, break an arm, we're going to have to send you back home to the U.S. to get surgery. And that's just going to like be really complicated. So he's like,
wow.
we don't want you risking getting hurt. I was not going to get hurt.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Doing jujitsu, but we
Yeah.
had like people breaking their legs playing basketball on their off
Sure.
days. And I'm like,
Yeah. I mean,
if they can do that, let me do my thing.
yeah, it's almost, in some sense, I mean, obviously, yeah, I know you just, submitted to the authority above you, but it's always like at any point in a foreign country, you can, I mean, anywhere, but especially in a foreign country, walking up the mountainside, you can break something, it's like, there's a lot of risk being in Brazil.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I was assaulted a couple of times as well as.
Really?
I had for like a year a high ankle sprain from walking just like along the hills of, and tripping
Yeah.
and spraining my ankle, that I was like, well, I'm not going to talk to them about it because it sounds like they might send me home.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm like, I'm just going to not tell anybody. And then it was just like, well, man, if I was going to get hurt, I wish I would have done it.
Yeah, doing your craft or
Yeah.
doing something towards it. So are you working out?
We
You
get
lift?
30 minutes a day. We can't go to the gyms just because, we weren't supposed to go to beaches. We weren't supposed to go like swimming and stuff. Just like their idea was avoid temptation, right?
I understand that, yeah. But yes,
And in Brazil,
there's temptation.
there's a lot of temptation. And
And
then
some of
like
the most beautiful people in the world live there.
most beautiful people in the world. And in the gym, it's the same thing, right? Like they're, you know how people dress.
Of course.
And so, then in a way they're like, hey, let's keep these boys
Yeah.
away from.
Because there's not really a lot of quote unquote supervision, right?
Yeah.
There's just the rules, and then you kind of self-manage.
Yeah. Self-managed. Well, it's kind of like, we had like a district leader or something. So like I was a district leader for a time, and it was like, I just had to watch over 8 other missionaries. And it wasn't like I was watching them.
Right.
I just call them, hey,
Everything okay?
everything good sort
Yeah.
of thing.
So what is it like to live in Brazil?
Awesome.
Yeah.
And also really scary.
So you said you're assaulted. What is, I mean, we just kind of like, I mean, is there an aggressive culture there? Is it, I mean,
No, I mean, so part of the reason why is, just in anywhere, right? Like if you're in the wrong part of
course.
Chicago,
100%.
something can happen. And so I was in it's a city outside of Rio called São Gonçalo, and I was on the edge of that city. And like the most dangerous part of like these South American countries isn't where the gangs are.
Okay.
It's where the gangs haven't necessarily established yet.
Gotcha.
And so it was like in an area between 2 gangs.
Mm.
The gangs act as like a kind
Protection, right?
yeah, they kind of
Yeah.
act as like the law. And so like if you're where the gang is, they don't want you messing with people because
Right.
the
Book's bad on
you
them.
you assault somebody, they call the police. The police
Yes.
come in, the
Makes
police gets in
sense.
their business.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was in the fringe area, and we were just walking on the street, and just car pulls up. I thought it was someone I knew because there was someone that I knew that drove the same car.
Gotcha.
And I like lean over the window, like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" It was a black window, and it just rolls down, and there's a gun in my face, and I'm like,
Shoot.
and they're like, "Give me everything," and I start stumbling out my bad Portuguese, and they're like, "Oh, you're not from here," and I'm like, "No," and they're like, and they roll up their window and get out of there.
Wow.
And so-
Wow. Was that the gnarliest thing that happened to you while you're there?
I mean, gnarliest thing that happened to me.
Okay. What about to your crew?
Well, I mean, like that area, like there was a point in time where like the military police invaded one of the favelas, and so it was like there's a
Full-on
tank
war.
outside,
Yeah,
essentially, yeah.
yeah.
Or there was just a lot of like really weird, intense situations. We watched like a police unit invade a favela and like corner a guy.
Yeah, I mean, down, again, there is crime everywhere, but it is like living in a, I travel outside the country quite a bit too. And you get to some spots, it's like, okay, it's like a bad spot, like you said, anywhere. You're going to see SWAT go in after people. You're going to see people dragged out. You're going to see that. And people like, they kind of give countries bad raps because of those micro areas or micro situations. But all in all, man, like I've enjoyed every country I've been to. Did you find that you were enjoying the process of being in Brazil then?
100%. I mean, like I said, like, so I'm going back this summer.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And I'm a little nervous, mainly because the people I'm bringing with me look very American, act very American.
Right.
which can be tough. But
Are you going back on like a mission, or are you going back just vacation?
just on vacation to go back and see the people, and
sure.
and I didn't get to go to the beaches.
Yeah,
So now I got to go to the
good deal,
beaches and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I loved it. And just as you said, like I have a buddy, you might have got to know him, Brandon Van Tassel. He served in Chicago, and he saw stuff that I was seeing in Chicago.
Could be rough, bro.
Yeah, my brother served in Houston, and he was seeing stuff like that in Houston, and so
it's all different than the dairy farm. I mean, for sure. I mean,
everything's
different.
shock.
Exactly. So you said you lived with the host family?
No, so the church has apartments.
Okay.
And it's you and the other missionaries that are with you there.
Gotcha. What is, if you had to describe Brazil just in a few words? I mean, what was it like? What's Brazil? I mean, I've never been. I want to go.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like in a way, like it's what you think of, right? Like stereotypes in some ways are true in terms of like, very open people as well as, the streets are a little dirtier.
Sure.
Right. But also just like there's a certain level of like freedom that you feel because of everyone's walking around with flip flops on and Bermuda and no shirt.
Yeah. That's what I kind of find in other countries, like some, especially some that are maybe a little more impoverished, a little dirtier, but there is a joy and a happiness that people carry that is so interesting that you don't see in Americans. And I think I equate it to the wealth, like the perspective of wealth in our country. It's like we are so focused on being rich or having money that we forget to enjoy now. And it seems like a lot of cultures enjoy now and worry about the other stuff later. Did you find that in Brazil?
100%. I mean, I spent some time in Copacabana in the area where it's rich, right? And the level of like happiness was actually, people were happier with less in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And like, not only that, but like your time spent with the people that, maybe don't have as much, your time with them felt like more genuine. And in the sense that like, they were just so happy to have that time and they weren't thinking about anything else.
Yes.
They were just enjoying the moment. Where when we were with, some of these, higher class people, it was like, just eat your food and leave so that way I can get back to doing my thing.
We're just entertaining you.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. So, but it's definitely, you're going back, so it's definitely a place you enjoyed.
Yeah, I loved it. It was amazing.
If you had to sum it up into, a couple sentences, what did it teach you?
Man, it taught me so much, but one of the biggest things that I try to tell people that I learned outside of, normal things you'd learn on a mission, the thing I learned the most important is that the most important thing for your life and for the success of your life, not necessarily financially, but like for happiness and for, just overall, overall happiness in your life is surround yourself with the right people and the right, the people that are going to bring you up in a certain way. We would meet people and it was like, hey, you were going to church and why did it stop? And it would always lead back to why, I started hanging out with this person. And there was the opposite situations where they're like, I was doing these terrible things. Then I started talking to this person and now my life's completely different. And so who you surround yourself with, for me, that was, okay, I want to surround myself with the right people as well as I need to find a companion that's going to make me a better person every day. And so I knew that decision moving forward was extremely important.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, that's big stuff. I like that. So, which I guess brings me to the question. I know you're happily married now. Did you know your spouse when you left?
I did, but there was no romantic involvement at the time. So our families go way back. So I live outside the city. Yeah. Her grandparents own a business in our little like Hardyville is what they call it. Yeah. They own a business in Hardyville.
No chance.
That's where they run their trucking company. And so like I grew up going on vacations with her uncle.
Just so you like the family's close.
Families are really close. And she didn't always live out there. So her family used to live in the city, a different city actually. And so she moved out when I was in high school and I got to know her and talk to her, whatever. Right. But it's like, I think she had a boyfriend and I wasn't interested in having a girlfriend.
Right.
So
Yeah.
wasn't anything, but always knew of her as like a
Sure.
person. Yeah.
So you come back. Do you have her in mind? How does that become a thing?
Wasn't even on my mind. I mean, I was dating another girl at the time when I got back. And then specifically, I remember I came back and just went to church and like saw her.
You saw her differently.
And I was like, and this is really embarrassing, but I had my mom ask her mom, hey, is she like single? Can I like talk to her?
Yeah, that's good.
And then, and then it was kind of just sparks flew. And then it was,
You got married pretty quick, right?
yeah, well, within a year and like 3 months since we started talking.
Yeah. I mean, congratulations on that. 'Cause she's awesome. And yeah, we'll talk more about her and your family in a bit. But Nebraska, are you committed to Nebraska before you leave?
I signed with Nebraska before I left.
Okay, so they knew everything that's going on and everything like that. What was that recruitment process like, and why Nebraska?
Yeah, so the recruitment process was weird because one, it was before the current rule set of law of however you can recruit. So they didn't start talking to me my junior year. I couldn't go on visits until my senior year.
Yes.
And I had a lot of schools talk to me, and I had a lot of schools call and me go, well, I'm thinking about going on a mission, and they're like,
yeah, not ready.
well, that's okay. And that is tough,
Sure.
Tell a school, hey, can you plan on me in 3.5 years sort of thing?
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I really like Nebraska is because these other schools were good, and there's other schools that had the same mindset as Nebraska, but they were like, we really want you, and we think that maybe, yes, this might hurt your wrestling, but we think this is going to make you overall a better person, and it's going to be your thing, and we don't want to infringe upon what you want to do with your life. So you go serve your mission, come back and wrestle for us.
Yeah.
And I was like, that sounds great. And then on top of that, Nebraska's Nebraska.
Yeah.
If Jordan Burroughs can become Jordan Burroughs in the Nebraska room,
Yeah.
anyone can go and do stuff there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. How long was the actual mission?
2 years. It was supposed to be 2 years.
Yeah.
It got cut 2 months short because of COVID.
Gotcha. But I mean, essentially 2 years out of wrestling, no wrestling, because you're there. You don't come back for the summer. You live there 2 years.
2 years straight.
Wow. So you get done. You come back. You get back in the summer before.
I got back in April.
Yeah, April,
of
okay.
2020.
Do you come straight here? Do you go spend time with family?
At the time, because of COVID, it was like, we can't be here.
That's
right.
right.
Normally, I would have got there June 1st for Summer Bridge, but I was there and I was at home, and I remember my dad set up wrestling mats, started working out.
How'd that feel?
Oh, I was so out of shape.
Yeah.
It was like, to a certain extent, like it's like riding a bike. You never really forget.
Get back in.
But it was tough getting back.
Was your mind ready for it? Did you want to come back to wrestling?
I was super ready for it. Super ready for it.
Yeah. So, okay, so you finally get to come out here in Nebraska, and, you come in. What's that like? Is it culture shock? Are you getting your butt kicked? Are you competing? Like, what's that like? Because I've heard every story. I mean, Jordan said he cried. He wanted to go home his freshman year, mainly because he missed a girl, but also because he's getting his butt kicked.
Yeah. I think, I was getting my butt kicked. For
Who were your partners?
So at the time, I was a 49-pounder because I was fat coming off the mission, weighing 160.
Wow.
And I was working out a lot with CJ, Ridge, and Peyton.
Man, hammers.
And then on top of that, like, some of the guys that were around the weight at the time, like a Kelber, Christian Miller, some of those guys. And like, I was competing with, the non-starters.
Right.
And I would even say I would score the generic point, but that's also because of the style of wrestling that I do, right? In a way, like, I was getting my butt kicked, but
You'd sneak one in.
Yeah, I mean, if you got somebody shooting threes at the 3-point line over and over and over, one's gonna go in at some point.
Right.
But I was definitely getting my butt kicked, but I didn't necessarily feel that miserable thing that people talk about of wanting to go home. But I think it was also because I just spent 2 years longing to be there.
Yeah, sure.
And so there was no like thought of, I kind of accepted it was gonna be a rough first year.
Yeah. Now, did you know that you were going to drop into 41?
So I was 49. They were recruiting me as a 49.
They did.
Granted, everyone recruited me at a 49, but that was because I didn't cut weight in high school. I was in Utah. I didn't need to cut weight.
Gotcha.
And then I found out after the fact that Flo was telling people, and it's okay, Flo.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, yeah.
They were telling people that they invited me to Who's Number One. They didn't. And that they reached out and that I was playing football, which I was, but they said that I weighed 170 playing football. And I'm like, I was 150 soaking wet playing football.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So that was kind of annoying. So that's why people had like this idea that I was really, really big.
Gotcha.
I was weighing 145 all the time. And
Yeah.
so I come, wrestle 149, win the spot.
Oh, you won the spot.
I won the spot. At the time I beat
Ridge.
At the time Kevon Davenport, Javon Parrish, and there was one other. So I win the spot. I wrestled the first couple duels, had a couple of signature wins, but then I also kind of just like got caught in a little bit of a rut, and I was winning, but it was like, you know, this is Nebraska, you know, we need more than winning.
Right.
At the time, Ridge had wrestled 33 the year before.
Oh yeah.
He was behind CJ at 41.
Yes.
And like the plan was he was just going to go there, but then, you know, Ridge was a big 41, so he was like, you know what, I'm going to try 49. And I think that there was probably maybe something behind the scenes that, you know, the coaches were like, hey, we think Ridge would probably do better than Brock would right now, which is, I was fresh off of my mission. Yeah,
Right.
probably.
Right.
We wrestle off, and it was it was like probably like right before Big Tens. And it was a close match, but he won both of them. So then he got the spot, and then I got sent home, went to church, saw Courtney. And so thank goodness Ridge beat me in that wrestle off.
Wow.
Otherwise,
So that's when you saw Courtney and everything changed.
yeah, that was like our first, like, we started talking
Yeah.
the week of NCAAs when I had lost the spot.
Whoa. So So did you burn a year?
That was COVID year, so it
COVID
didn't even
year.
count.
That's right.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, all that worked very well to your favor.
There's I've been very, very blessed in how a lot of these things have happened. I got to come home a little bit earlier because of COVID.
Yes.
Everyone else got fat because of COVID.
Right.
Everyone stopped working out for 6
Yeah,
months.
For sure.
So in a way, there's just been a lot of, you know, really fortunate events that have helped my career.
Yeah. And then so after Ridge, you know, you guys wrestle off, you decide that you're going to go to 41 the next year.
They tell me,
They
said, hey, actually, you're a tiny 49. You got lots of body fat. Or let's go to 41. Redshirt behind CJ next year. Spend the year getting your weight figured out. And you'll be the starter from then on out.
So you actually, man, that's so interesting. You gave 2 years to God. He gave you 2 years back.
He gave me 2 years of, remember how to wrestle. Sort of.
So interesting.
Yeah.
It's that's really cool. And so you get to come up under CJ. You're wrestling with CJ and Ridge and P Rob. You said,
yeah. I probably stopped wrestling with P Rob once I dropped to 41.
right? Yeah. Are you getting better in the room?
Yes, 100%. Better in the room, and then it was like kind of like a mental thing too of being able to remember how to be competitive, because that was one of the main things I felt like I lost on the mission.
Gotcha. Yeah, just time outside of competing and things like that. So as you're wrestling these guys and you're wrestling, you know, you're getting those reps with CJ, you're getting those reps with Ridge. What actually? Because everybody talks about wrestling in college changes you a bit. You got to get better at certain positions. What was it that you had to get better at?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a benefit of being coached by Kyler Sanderson in high school.
Okay.
And I remember, so I started getting coached by him my junior year, and he was like, you know, you got to learn how to hand fight. Because in Utah, I could just touch, grab sort of thing. And I remember Brayton Lee beat me at Fargo, and I was killing him in the first period, killing him. I think I was up 6-2, 6-1, but I literally couldn't lift my head by the end of the second period. And it was because he was wrestling college rooms. He was in Indiana, right. He was in Purdue, and he could hand fight.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like my senior year, that's what I was working on. And so then I kind of forgot a little bit, but then essentially that like jump that I made during the 2 years of COVID year red shirt was, you know, hand fight attacks, as well as like a certain level of persistence that you have to have in college wrestling. High school, you shoot, you score most of the time.
Yes.
In college, you shoot, could be a minute before you get that takedown. So there's a certain level of like, okay, I just have to, you know, have some level of controlled focus towards the end goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that exact thing. I mean, we have a lot of people sitting in this, you know, in this room, and they've said hand fighting is always one of the top things. And some of the wrestlers, you know, because they were so good in high school, they had to get better, like on bottom, because they weren't used to having to get. I mean, getting up in high school for them was easy, or people just cut them.
Yeah.
You know, and so they had to get better there. And then the other one is obviously you're great on top. A lot of guys had trouble on top because they were usually releasing their guy just to take him down and tech him or whatever. But going into that kind of top thing, have you always been like a hammer on top? Has that always been your thing?
Yes. I mean, in high school, I mean, I cradled everybody, but it was also partially, I will say, because my brother was better at top than I was.
Oh.
That was kind of his thing. He didn't necessarily have what I have on my feet, and so he relied on top, and so he would win matches on top in high school. And so in a certain level, it was like an emulation, like I want to be like him. And so then, you know, got to do that. My high school coach was really good on top. And, you know, I just found it enjoyable to kind of learn how to turn and pin people.
Where do the legs come in?
Him probably, right? Like kind of like learn from him.
Yeah.
But I ride legs very differently than most people.
Very different.
Yeah, it's like Ridge, when he's on top, it feels like he's trying to break you in half with his legs.
And I think he is. Yes.
While when I'm on top, it feels like, you know, maybe like an octopus is like, you know, just kind of like slowly strangling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
self-taught, or did somebody teach you that?
A little bit of self-taught, and also kind of like, you know, I loved watching David Taylor wrestle a little bit, and he kind of did something similar, and kind of like I would just like see it and be like, you know, I kind of want to do that. That's kind of what I want to try.
What would you call that? I mean, because you don't really write. Do you go crossbody? Oh, not.
I don't go crossbody. I'll go forward, but most of the time I want them to sit me into crab ride.
Yeah, that's what you're looking for.
It's like a leg in crab ride.
Yeah, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for them to sit. That's what you like. And when you get to that crab ride position, what are you looking for? What do you like that so much?
This is actually club coaches. I got really good at crab ride because he was kind of teaching me a lot of like, you just keep their arms and kind of pull them back a little bit, and they become very uncomfortable. People don't like
that arch,
that like feeling of like I'm falling. Yeah, and so kind of like forcing that uncomfortableness and then looking for looking for wrists.
Gotcha. Because. And I mean this in a complete compliment. There's a lot of times when you wrestle, you look out of position.
For sure.
So what is that? Like, is that because you are so comfortable being in those positions that you kind of want your opponent to feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, Snyder gets mad at me because he's like, you know, you got to stop trying to play this bait game, because it has. I've been reversed more in college than I think I've letting people off bottom.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a certain level of like comfortableness, and it's because I do like to get myself in that position in practice, and so I become so comfortable doing it. And, you know, if scrambles and wrestling are going to happen, it favors me anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're really good at it. And like you said, you get reversed because you do get in that position where it's, oops, okay, I got to bail.
Yeah.
But you are so comfortable there, and you do it so well. And I think that it's interesting because you wrestle in uncomfortable situations so much that you make it comfortable, but your opponent constantly looks feared. Yes. They look scared. They almost look like they're in a panic. A lot of your match, they're not wrestling like in solid position, and it's because you're not wrestling, you know, basic top bottom or basic neutral. You're constantly in this weird angle. And it's just time in that position that's made you good there. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was at schoolway duels, and I wrestled a match, tech the kid. And one of my like friends he was one of our coaches, but he was like a friend's dad, and he's like, "You just like chaos, don't you?" And I was like, "I guess in a way." And so like, that's something that I've helped re-identify that I didn't necessarily have when I first got back from my mission, but it was like, you know, I enjoy when non-normal wrestling is happening, right?
It's fun to watch too.
Yeah, and so like if there's non-normal things happening, I have done so much play wrestling, so much sparring, and so much wrestling that I've been there before at some point.
Yeah.
And so I'll figure it out.
Yeah. I feel like that you kind of like you know, when Ben Askren kind of pulled the whole new like kind of like scrambling funky wrestling, I feel like you are creating a new style of wrestling in some sense, because I don't really watch anybody that I'm like, he wrestles a lot like Brock. A lot of times you'll every once in a while you'll see you'll get in a match and like, oh, this kid's flexible like Brock or whatever may be the case, or I watch other guys and I'm like, oh, these guys are the exact same wrestler. You know, I see Lenny Pinto and this guy wrestle. I'm like, they dig underhook, and it's very similar. And I'm like, I want to see how this goes. With you, it's like you're creating this.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it is hard to find, and I think that partially is because, you know, going back to my like high school days, I would follow my brother around to clubs, and then on top of that, because I was kind of like, my dad had good relationships, I wrestled, I swear, in every wrestling room in the state of Utah at some point, and got coached by every single coach in
so
Utah.
you're a modge podge of,
yeah, and so I kind of got this modge podge of styles, and then on top of that, like, I just found I always find new wrestling cool, and so like I'll watch, you know, I was watching Yanni when I was in high school, and I'm like, I should try to do stuff like him. I was watching Nolf, and I'm like, I kind of want to do that thing like Nolf, and so like, to certain levels, it kind of like came about that way, and I loved watching Askren when I was a kid and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there was a style, it does kind of seem like, yeah, you picked a little Yanni, you picked a little Nolf, you know, and those guys are great examples of people in Ben that didn't follow the trend. They were creating and inventing, you know, constantly. There's stuff that whenever you do it and those guys do it, I'm like, oh, that's invented.
Yeah,
that's not real life, you know, like, but people going to start to emulate that. I really believe, because you're such a popular wrestler and fun to watch, I believe you're going to see kids coming up that are going to do that. And that's awesome, man. So congrats to you. That's
Thank you. I mean, I even just try to force guys on our team to wrestle like me, and I'll be happy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's improved everybody. I'm sure Ridge is a better wrestler wrestling you because Ridge, my son got to wrestle Ridge last year, just, you know, because he was mouthing Ridge, and Ridge had to prove, you know, show him what was up. And Javen said, you know, he literally felt like he was being pulled apart. Like he felt like every joint was breaking. But Ridge has a certain style. I bet it's made him comfortable wrestling people in whenever, because he's wrestled you so much that he gets into compromising situations. Like, I've been here with Brock. Yeah. You know, and vice versa. You wrestle around with Ridge. I'm sure somebody throws legs, you're like, doesn't feel like Ridge.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, that's something that's so incredible about our room is not only do we have such a great wrestling room here at Nebraska, but it's like, you know, just from 41, 49, 57, we had 3 finalists. We don't wrestle alike at all.
Not at all.
Like, you know, Ridge is more of a defensive feet wrestler. And on, like, I talk about wrestling Ridge like wrestling barbed wire, in the sense that, like, you grab a leg and it's like, why does this hurt?
Yeah.
That, like, I have his leg and it hurts me.
Exactly what Javen said. He goes, I don't know how he hurt me, but he hurt me bad.
Yeah. And then I'm probably more, I like to describe myself as like water, in the sense of like, you like try to grab me and it just, you can't hold on. And then on top of that, like, very formless in a way.
Yeah.
And then Trelly, you know, is his own style. You know, he's the most extremely explosive and very kind of like smart, extremely intelligent about how he approaches matches.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is such a cool thing, because, you know, typically you'll see back-to-back weights that are really good, but they're very similar wrestlers. Like, you can tell, like, those dudes get after it in practice. But you guys are like tell of like 3 different stories, you know, but I think they do complement each other real well. I think because the 3 of you are so different, you get a look for almost anybody you're going to wrestle. You have a feel for the explosion from like Trelly, that just violence from Ridge, and the smooth and trickery of you. Like, that's going to help. You know, I mean, I think that's why you guys are all just hammers. Yeah. Do you get to roll quite a bit with those guys?
Yeah, I try to. I mean, I roll a lot with Ridge. Now that I'm a little bit bigger now, because of in the off season, I'm trying to grab Trelly more. Yeah. And I would grab Trelly during the season. He doesn't carry his weight too much, and And then on top of that, I'll go all the way down and wrestle the 25 pounders. And so, you know, just once again, like, just as getting as much coaching as possible is important, you know, feeling as much wrestling is just as important.
I want to say this too. I feel like 25 and 33 emulate you guys. I've seen their styles start to do some of the stuff you do. And I, you know, probably you guys share off of each other. I'm not just saying, you know, that, but like Van D does some hardy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and he's got that, again, he's got that like elusiveness. And again, also with Smith, I mean, it's like you watch him, you're like, oh, they've been scrambling in practice. Like you can tell, like he's totally okay in this position, and he's gotten better. And I think that has to do with just rolling together.
Yeah, 100%. And then on top of that, having, you know, partially I am how I am too because of Snyder and Tervel, who are, you know, they're doing a good job of taking in information about what Trelly does well and spreading it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so they teach it and curate the whole room.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Are they ever panicked with you?
They aren't, for the most part. Obviously, there's times I think that they panic a little bit. I think that, you know, they've gotten to the point now, year 3, that they're pretty comfortable when I'm wrestling. Yeah. But I do think I give Manning more gray hair than he already has, for sure. Just because, you know, in his 40-year-long coaching career, he hasn't had too many people that like to do the stuff that I like to do.
Yeah. No. Now, is the knee thing the ability to turn it around backwards? Is this a physical thing that you have something different in your body? What is that? I mean, when did you realize that your knees could do that? And does it hurt?
College was when I realized it.
Really?
I didn't do it that much in high school. I mean, I was good at like corner sits and stuff like that, but like the flexibility didn't come until college for the most part. And
right.
I have always been flexible. That's not to say I've always been flexible.
Right.
I've always been able to, like, you know, really, I was always like, what's the one where you like touch your toes and you have to push the little thing back and touch the wall or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever the flexibility test. I was always really high on that.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess I just have really flexible hips and it comes across as I have like a rubber knee.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. I mean, like I said, I think just in high school I didn't need to use it, and so I didn't realize it. And so it was like I get to college and it becomes more prevalent, and now it's like, oh, I have that thing that I guess I've had this whole time, right? Like my secret superpower that I didn't know.
Yeah. Does it hurt when you're?
No, I mean, there's times that like it does hurt my knee, and it's like I definitely try to avoid putting my knee in bad positions, because there's times where it's like, it looks bad on my knee, but really my hip is the one that's flexing.
Gotcha.
There's times where it is my knee.
Yeah.
And that's usually when I kind of like stop doing stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
But no, it doesn't hurt for the most part. No. I mean, it's just like, you know, does it hurt like when you stretch a little too far?
Yeah.
Like, a little bit, but it's also like not like a bad hurt.
Gotcha. How frustrating is it whenever you're in that position and they stop it because they potentially dangerous? Are you looking to sometimes get that call, or are you?
No, I really don't want them to stop it. Mainly because, you know, when my leg is like kind of twisted, what I'm really trying to do is straighten it and then turn it.
Gotcha.
So that way, you know, they have my foot, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, like when you twist your foot, they lose the position that they had on it.
Yes.
And so when they stop it, I'm like, I was really close to getting what I wanted.
Yes.
And I just don't like when they stop wrestling in general.
Right.
I think that stalemate's lame most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time. There's sometimes that
for sure. So yeah, the idea for you is when you're in that position and you're always twisted around, you want to kind of you trying to get corner, you're trying to sit to your hip and get the edge, kind of sit corner here. That's what you're wanting to do.
Yeah.
Pretty much every time.
Yeah, for the most part, or I'll like re-kick through it. But yeah, for the most part, I just want, you know, most of the time it comes from them having like a single or like a outside head outside or whatever.
Yep.
And they have my foot this way.
Yes.
Which is what you're taught to do. You want to, you know, most people can't bend out of that.
Yes.
And so I want to get my body over this way so that way I can twist my leg.
Rotate back down and sit corner. And yeah, I love watching it, but I gotta say, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you know, the whole crowd does the ooh, and you're just wrestling. You're
Yeah.
like, shh, don't say anything, you know, I don't want
like,
to stop. Yeah, exactly,
because the refs will hear you
Yeah,
guys.
for sure, for sure. So fans of Hardy, shut your mouths, right? Just
Yeah.
let him do his thing. Yeah. Okay, so getting your college career here, what's some of the most memorable matches that you had? You know, obviously, you know, going into the NCAA, you know, and stuff like that, Big Tens, those are big matches. But for you, what are some of the most memorable matches and why?
Yeah. Do they have to be wins?
No, I think a lot of times the most memorable are the losses.
For sure. So I think 3 matches poke out. So I'll say 4. So first match of college career I lost. Outside of COVID year.
Yeah, right.
I don't feel like COVID year counts.
Yeah.
So I lost to the NDSU kid who was good. I think he was ranked 11th at the time. And that moment stuck with me. And that one was just kind of like a, you know, just baptized by fire sort of thing. I lose the very last duel of the year to a true freshman off the bench. I was supposed to wrestle someone else. He comes out, wrestles, puts me in a cradle. I end up losing like 8-4.
Mm-hmm.
That one sticks with me for a long time as like a lesson of every single match you must approach with, you know, that it's the best person in the country.
Yeah.
And then these last 2 are wins. Beating Real Woods last year for 3rd and 4th was, you know, like the biggest get the monkey off my back sort of thing. Like, finally, right? Like, because in a way, like, I had convinced myself that I couldn't beat him.
Yeah.
Right? Even though, like, in a couple of those matches, ref calls a little bit different call, I win.
Right.
But in a way, I was just like, I'm cursed, right? I can't do it. And then lastly, you know, beating Jesse at Big Tens was very, very big and kind of like, you know, I was on a roll before then, but it was kind of like a reminder to myself that, you know, Jesse's gonna, you know, me and him are gonna be competing for a long time. You know, if I win the rest of them, that'd be great. But that's just not the reality of most, you know, rivalries in a way. And so, you know, he's probably going to make a world team at some point. And hopefully I'd make a world team. And so it's kind of like I'm on the same level as that, right?
Yes.
And so kind of like it changed how I look at the rest of my career looking forward.
Yeah. Yeah. How much do you think those significant, those big wins kind of changed your mindset to say, I'm here?
Yeah. A lot. You know, beating Real was huge. That was like, hey, you know, I can do this. And then, you know, kind of like I lost to Bo in the duel, and it was kind of like a similar situation where it was like, man, I felt like I was wrestling way better than, I feel like to wrestle that good, I shouldn't have lost. I obviously made a lot of mistakes looking back on the match, but then I kind of got on this roll. But you know, everyone was telling me, you know, oh, you know, you're on a roll, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but I haven't wrestled anyone like, you know, super good lately. And so in a way I was discrediting it. And so like beating Jesse was kind of like, oh no, I am wrestling better than usual right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that Jesse, you know, I mean, Jesse's he's an Indiana boy. He's such a good dude too. I mean, we call it, you know, the rivalry of, you know, between the two of you guys. Is there good blood, bad blood?
No, good blood. I for the most part don't have any bad blood with anyone at my weight.
Yeah.
And I'm actually particularly close with the guys who have beat me.
Yeah.
Right? Like me and Bo have a really good relationship. Me and Jesse have a really good relationship. Yeah. And I don't know if that's how they would be if I, you know, wasn't, but I for the most part, like, I want to have a good relationship with these people, partially because, like, you know, I have more respect for someone of their caliber in a way, right?
Yeah.
And they've never done me wrong in a way.
Yeah.
Right? You know, even the moment with Jesse from last year at NCAA's.
Yeah.
Like, there was no ill intent on his part. There's never been ill intent by anyone to do anything. And so, you know, we're just, you know, competitors that love wrestling, and, you know, we just happen to wrestle the same weight.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously the meme heard around the wrestling world. How did that affect you? I mean, you take such things in such great stride, but behind the scenes, is it any different? Was there any?
The only time it got to me, so like, it happens. I don't think of any of it. And I remember I was like, I'm just going to make jokes about it. And I made the jokes about the rest of NCAAs.
Yeah.
I take third. And in a way, I was like, maybe people will get over it. And I remember that night, like, you know, I'd re-downloaded social media. I'm going through social media. The only thing that truly hurt me was like seeing like friends of mine share it and like friends of mine liking it.
Yeah.
Friends of mine commenting, making jokes about it. And it was kind of like, I understand the world and like the internet. It's dumb sometimes, right? Like they'll do stupid things. But like when it's someone you know, someone that's like close to you or like that knows you personally, like that was the thing that really hurt. Like I had friends from back home like liking it, and I was just like,
why?
Man, like that's not. If there was a viral video of you doing something, would you want me to like and share it, sort of thing? And that's the other thing too, is like, you know, your mind starts to play tricks on yourself. And I'm like, okay, if my friend liked it, he shared it with his whole family, right? And here they probably shared it with their whole family, right? I'm the laughing stock of all the people. And so, I was eating my mind. And then, like, you know, I went to bed that night. And then after that, for the most part, didn't really get hurt by it again. For the most, I was going to turn it into, you know, it is what it is sort of situation.
Yeah. I mean, in wrestlers, I mean, we know, I mean, that positions happen. I mean, it's just a move, and it's a funny looking position, but it's just a wrestling move. So it's like, obviously, we're like, as soon as it happened in the match, where I'm like, oh, because we're there, right there in that match, we're so close, you know. So from a fan perspective, we're like, dang it, you know, this move happens, and plus, it's kind of one of those moves you kind of just like you can't do much, and so I'm frustrated for you, but then obviously as it goes through it, I'm like, you know. Like I thought, it's like people are making this way too big of a deal. You know, you don't see a headlock, you know, just shown that much. But I can see definitely from your family and friends that you're like, hey, okay, we all laughed, let's move on. Yeah. You know, but yeah, I mean, I think people also need to realize and say, you know, understand that there is a human behind every loss, every win. There's a human behind it, and we sometimes forget that. You know, I mean, I'm kind of the other way. I get real. You know, I have a lot of just empathy for every wrestler, because I'm like, you know, there's certain people I want to hate on because, you know, we're Team Nebraska, but then I'm like, dude, because one thing that I do is I watch every competitor come off the mat and go to the tunnel, and my guy just won, and I'm loving life, but I see the tears from the other competitor and the coaches, and I'm like, oh, that hurts too, you know, and people forget that, you know.
100%. I mean, we get caught up in we just like winners, right? I think too, like the situation, you know, as it happened, you know, I just lost my thought. I had a thought.
That's all right. It's all right. Well, I do know Jesse commented on it afterwards, and he, you know, he was not making big deal of the, you know, meme side of, you know, the position. He was just saying he kind of hated that it hadn't happened that way, but it was there.
No, yeah. So I've actually heard from, I think my family talked to his family, and like he was maybe torn up about it more than I was, because he felt like a certain level of guilt, which, Jesse, you don't have to feel guilty for wrestling, right?
Yeah.
You know, wrestling, that's what I was going to say. Another thing that bugs me about it, I lied, there's one other thing that bugs me. I don't like when wrestling people share it.
Sure.
Because it's kind of like,
we all know.
We already struggle as a sport
when
it comes to being looked at weird by other sports, as well as just coverage in general.
Yes. And
so they post it to get cheap views.
Yes.
Because they know,
of course,
that it's going to attract the butthole of the internet.
Yes.
And so they do it. And so like I'll see somebody post it. I'm like, just like,
let's let it go.
You're supposed to be for wrestlers.
Exactly.
Like post, maybe just, hey, go find any video of Satya wrestling and just post that, because that is more uplifting to our sport than whatever that is.
Makes a lot of sense for sure. I think you handled it well, because did you go on Pat McAfee?
No, I went on the Yak.
The Yak, okay. But it was cool because, I mean, yes, you took it in stride. A lot of people maybe wouldn't have did that, you know, but you did try to turn it to say wrestling's cool, and that's your whole thing, right? Like wrestling's fun, wrestling's, you know, that's your thing. And I like that, you know, and getting into that kind of your whole brand, and you say wrestling's fun. Do you believe that?
100%.
Yeah. What makes wrestling fun?
You know, everything that's fun about it is kind of like what we've talked about so far. I love chaos. I love learning new moves, hitting those new moves. I also love, like, you know, I lost that Bo Bartlett match. That was so fun.
Yeah.
Like, literally, they're just wrestling was happening.
Yeah.
Wrestling is what is fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
the competition aspect of it can get scary. Weight cutting's not fun,
No.
you know, and, you know, certain other aspects aren't fun. But, like, the wrestling itself, for the most part, is always fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, in a way, like, yeah, there's a certain level of brainwashing I've done to myself to think this way. But,
Sure.
like, yeah, I think that brainwashing can be good.
Yeah, I mean, especially in hard things like that, you know, you gotta enjoy the suffering and things like that. Johnny DeJulius is, you know, he's been quoted saying that, but talking about wrestling being fun. But wrestling is the actual wrestling is fun. That you need to create wrestling so that it is fun. He said, if you go out and you're scared, that's not fun.
No.
You know, he's like, you know, we already suffer in practice. We're always cutting weight. We're always doing these things. But now we go out and we're supposed to be having the fun part, and we don't wrestle. He said, why would you do that? Do the part that's fun, you know, which I think that's what you champion all the time. It's like wrestling's fun, not stalling, not being scared, not worrying about wins and losses. It's the wrestling. Do the part. And I love that, dude. And I love your brand. I think it's great. And I'm sure that you got that on your website and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So check it out, because I bought a sweatshirt. It's awesome. So
Yeah, you got it at NCAA's, right?
I did.
Yeah, so exactly kind of what you're saying. I love Johnny DeJulius, like his mindset a lot. But you know, doing the wrestling is fun. It all originated from, first off, my club coach used to say it, and if you listen to the Penn State guys, they say score points, have fun. So that's kind of like their little motto sometimes. And that was what Kyler would tell me before, you know, hey man, just go out there, score points, have some fun.
Yeah.
And so then I remember it was right before my freshman year, South Dakota State got to wrestle All-American. Oh my gosh, did I just forget his name? Clay Carlson. I'm going out to wrestle him, and I'm at South Dakota State. It was kind of a tight duel, and it was like their little arena was popping. Like, it was like, and I kind of had like a bad weight cut. And remember Snyder, you know, or I'd kind of told Travell about wrestling is fun, and he just kind of grabs me. He's like, hey man, remember what I said? Remember what we talked about? I was like, wrestling is fun, right? And so then it was like this moment of, instead of go out there with some form of fear of being scared to lose, it was like, hey man, let's just take advantage of this moment. You're getting to wrestle in an enemy environment with all of these fans against a really freaking good wrestler.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Don't think about all the things that make it not fun.
For sure.
Because if you wanted to think about everything that's not fun about wrestling, you will have a laundry list of things to think about.
Of course.
And I think that the most important thing I want, like, people to know about wrestling is fun is that this is a metaphor. Wrestling is fun, and that's what sports are. Life is fun, right? Like, if you wanted to come up with a laundry list of reasons of why life isn't fun, you could find it, right? Like, oh man, taxes, bills, whatever, you know, this, that. But if you just think about, like, man, sunrises, there's just something about them, right? They're so fun, you know, like spending time with, you know, your companion, whoever that is, so fun. Hanging out with your friends, good food. Like, there's so many good things about life is fun if you think about the right things.
Right. For sure. And I think the opposite is true too. I can talk about the beach and say it's miserable. The sun's hot, the water's salty, sand all over the place. I'm thirsty. You know, I just sit there. Like, I could go on and tell you how bad the beach is. You know, and I do a lot of like mindset coaching. I do a lot of just, you know, teaching and stuff like that. And one thing we talk about is your perspective is everything. You know, I was like, I taught a message before about, I could take you to Disney World, and if you're in the wrong mindset, you will have the worst time ever. Worst time. It's supposed to be the happiest place on earth. Depending on your perspective, you could be miserable. Lines, hot, food's expensive, everything. And I hear it when you're there. You hear people like complaining, and it's easy to do. But that, like you said, it's life. Wrestling, I think, and that's one thing I love about the sport, is that it emulates life so much. And I hear a lot of times people telling me wrestling's hard. And I know it is, right? But if you think about it being hard, it's always going to be hard. I just love your perspective of saying, so let's start with wrestling's fun. We know the hard's going to be there. We know the suck's going to be there. We know all that stuff, but let's go back to wrestling's fun. That's the base. I think it's awesome, man. I think that's the message.
Yeah, 100%. And hard is fun.
It is fun.
Like I said, like, brainwashing can be good. Just brainwash yourself to good things, right? And so it's kind of like me and Ridge are cutting weight. And yeah, I could sit there and feel sorry for myself, or I can be like, this is kind of funny.
Yeah.
And if something's funny, it's fun, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like the hard, like you said, I think that as a society, we shy away from hard too much.
For sure.
I think that we need to find the fun in hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a quote on here, and it goes along right with that. It's like, every great thing comes from suffering. And I think that that's true. I mean, like, marriage is hard. Right? Being a father is hard. Work is hard. Life is hard. But it's worth it. It's the suffering and the development through that suffering that makes everything great, for sure. And wrestling, I think, teaches that at a very good level.
Yeah.
For sure.
100%. I love that. I love that because, especially in today's day and age, it's so easy to get things without hard. And, yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you can just, bypass the hard, but you're not going to get the product of, the nothing good doesn't come without some form of sacrifice, some form of suffering, some form of effort. And so if you can look to apply yourself to effort, the better off you're going to be.
For sure. 100%. And I also believe that this life is that's kind of the purpose, right? Is for us to refine ourselves over and over and over again through the suffering, through the trials. Because if you don't learn the lesson, God has a great way of allowing the cycle to continue.
Exactly.
It will look different. Maybe it looks like now me struggling as a husband, or me struggling in finances, or me struggling, but it's the same struggle until I accomplish and overcome. And then he allows me to graduate to the next one, and then the next one. And the crazy thing about it is I will stay as broken as I allow myself until I have faced the suffering.
Yeah. I love that. And, God created us with the purpose of us choosing to make ourselves better.
Yes.
And so making the choice and breaking the cycle and using the atonement is so important.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that we talk about in our faith is, my wife and I talk about this a lot, is like, I bring this up in the podcast a few times, but I would say there's breakers and there's takers. And, there's people that take, because our DNA being a storage drive of our past, we take that trauma, those issues of our, family members and life, people before us and ourselves. Either we take it forward to our kids and then the next generation and the next generation, or you're a breaker. You're someone in your timeline where things changed and you did the hard work. And now we look back and we go, great-grandfather Brock Hardy, we're champions. We hard stuff's fun. And we do these things, and that becomes the lineage and the legacy in which now the Hardy family has, because you were a breaker, and you have that. We have that power. It's such a amazing thing.
100%. We have the ability to, yeah, exactly. Break the pattern and create the pattern that we're meant to be on.
Yeah, for sure. And, sometimes people are just unaware of it. It's nothing against our fathers and our grandfathers, stuff like that. They're just unaware of it because they were grinding, in the field. They were doing these things, and they didn't have the time to maybe approach that. They just thought that was life.
And they probably broke something.
I'm sure they did.
Maybe something that we didn't even know.
Of course. We were not carrying something. We are 100% not carrying something because of our dads or our grandfathers or down there. Somewhere down the line, somebody was really, really bad. And somebody said, no.
Yeah.
And, and that's a cool thing. It's like, I can look at my life and assess it and say, oh, I see this kind of thing in our family that maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's giving up, on our dreams or whatever may be the case. I can change that.
Yeah.
One domino effect, it changes the course of everything, which is just cool. And I go all the way back to this. Wrestling's fun. Exactly. I love that. So that's good stuff. Going off of the finals this year, obviously came up just a bit short, but you aren't going to probably talk about this, but I get the pleasure sitting around your family almost at every meet, and especially the big ones. And, we're talking and I watch them. And first off, man, it's so fun to watch your family enjoy, especially your wife. I actually have filmed your wife just watching you.
He's passionate.
Dude, she is going wild, you know, and my daughter's very similar to her. And they get into it, and she is wrestling the full match with you.
100%.
Yeah. And, you know, mom's having her time. Dad's pretty stoic and pretty even killed. I mean, he gets moving. I see him moving a little bit, but mom's kind of hiding her face and not watching a little bit. But your wife she was standing on the chair at NCAA's, and I was like, she's going to fall. You know, she's jumping around. I'm like, I've literally reached out to grab her because I'm like, she's going over.
Yeah.
You know, but she's awesome. But in those big matches like the NCAA finals, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Also, I heard from them you were sick.
Yeah, I mean,
I know you've not even been out there. I'm gonna say it, and I know you don't really probably want to talk about it, and you're not making an excuse. That's not what it is. But what was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I was unsure of what it was exactly, right? You know, I went to the bathroom a lot right before the finals, and definitely had stuff that wouldn't stay down. But, you know, it was, you know, the wrestling happens, right? Like, I walked out on the mat. Yeah. That's all that matters, right? Yeah. Like, he got me. You know, there's a lot of talk of like, you know, well, I didn't wrestle 100%. You know, I didn't do this. I stepped out on the mat. That was blood and flesh Brock Hardy,
right?
And he lost the match, right? And so,
yeah, I know you're not an excuse guy.
Yeah, and so like I was sick, but I don't know what it was from. I don't know if it was food poisoning or if it was just like a 24-hour bug, but it was just, you know, nothing was sitting, nothing wanted to stay in, and you know, I at first I chopped it up to nerves, and then I was getting like the cold sweats and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I wish that I could go back and be healthy. You know, maybe something else happens, but at the same time, like you can't do that.
You can't
right?
do it. Yeah, and you know, I think I love your perspective.
Because I don't know, Jesse could have been sick.
Yeah.
For all I know, Jesse's got a broken knee, and he didn't let anyone know.
Right, yeah, for sure. And I think that's the most powerful thing you can take from that. And my son-in-law and I talk about a lot because, you know, he goes through his things and stuff like that. I'm like, and I'm always constantly saying, everybody has something. Mm-hmm. How you deal with that something separates you. That's it, you know? And so the reality is that, somebody, you know, Jesse could have been sick or couldn't hurt or whatever, but, you know, you wrestle that match, you get up pretty quick and you're looking really good. And then obviously Jesse comes back and does what Jesse does. Is there anything different in that match that you felt was different than the previous times you've wrestled him?
I mean, he came with a really, really good game plan. They knew that I was attacking his right leg. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I would get to. And so they did a good job of that. And then on top of that, they did a research on, you know, you need to attack me in a certain way that you don't have to scramble, that you don't have.
His timing on that double was ridiculous, and it was knees together.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no counter.
Yeah, exactly. And so leaving no chance for a counter. And so, you know, they did a great game plan and great coaching.
Yeah. It was a great match. I mean, I love watching you guys.
We scored points. No one else did that.
I know that. You know, one thing I hated about the finals was just like you're on his national scale, and you like it's like, come on, like let's do something more. You guys were wrestling. You're getting after it. It was a fun match to watch. But yeah, all in all, you love wrestling, Jesse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. I mean, I love wrestling everyone that's good at wrestling, right? Like Vance Vombauer scares the crap out of me because he does not stop wrestling, but also it's kind of fun, right? Like the fear in a way is fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, I was sitting beside the Ohio State fans. The Nebraska people were at the Big Tens, and they were all saying, like, obviously they love Jesse, but they're like, we're such big Brock Hardy fans. They love you.
I appreciate it, and I try to put out a certain level of product, right, that people, you know, will just enjoy the wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they're there for
sure,
right?
For sure.
Everyone there is there probably to support somebody, but if they're not supporting that person, they just want good wrestling to happen. And so if I can just make wrestling happen, you know, maybe people will like it.
For sure. You're so fun to watch. Like you're one of my, you know, I have my favorites in the lineup, and I love everybody, but I'm like, I can't wait for this match, you know, and you're always that guy, because it's fun to watch wrestling. Again, wrestling's fun when we're wrestling. So kind of get some, you know, just other small little things here. The NIL stuff. Okay, so the Brock Hardy stock is up. right? And it has been for a long time, but you keep rising. What do you think about the NIL? Is it good, bad? How's it affecting you personally?
Yeah. I enjoy being able to, have a camp, use my name, use my image, use my likeness, being able to have these shirts and make money off of them. I have a lot of family from back home, or like people that I know back home, that will like make comments about NIL or make comments with the transfer portal that, I can see where they come from.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, I think that they may be, they talk about pay to play, and they talk about, how there's no loyalty or anything. And to a certain extent, I agree. But at the same time, like, it was a business before.
For sure.
There was plenty of money being made before.
For sure.
I think that's the biggest problem, is that we switched to NIL instead of the revenue sharing that's probably going to be better.
Yeah.
And I still think that we should have NIL. I don't think that how it's currently being done is sustainable, right? Because right now it is just like a donor. It's like, hey, we will give this little foundation a bunch of money to give out to whoever you guys need to have a good team. But I think that in a way, like, I like freedom, right? And before, it was a business that only one side got to have any cards.
Yep.
I have this conversation with an old friend, and he's like, people can just, they could get offered by any school and they could just leave. I'm like, yeah, but coaches did that to wrestlers all the time, right? Like, all the schools I got recruited to no longer hold the coaching staff that I was recruited to.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, had I committed to go to, let's say NC State because of Adam Hall, which would have been one of the main reasons why I would have gone to NC State. Right. He's not there no more.
Yeah.
And if there's no transfer portal, I'm stuck with where I didn't want to be, right? And so transfer portal, NIL, while to the extremes is wrong, but I think that's how we agree with like everything. Like, I think that how, people take advantage of other people in other aspects of life is wrong.
Yes.
But it's not under scrutiny like NIL can be.
For sure. No, I would 100% agree with what you're saying there. I think it's essential that you guys are compensated for what you do. Also, it does give you the freedom to be able to move, where you feel is best for you. And I think what we underscore a lot is loyalty is a two-way street, and we expect it to be a one-way street.
Exactly.
And with this, it's like somebody might say, well, my guy, he's going to be loyal to the program, and they use that as leverage. But loyalty also would mean that school would be loyal to them and compensate them at least on the similar level as somebody else is saying, Brock Hardy's worth X amount of dollars to X program. Nebraska, we love Brock. We're going to try to keep him all. This is what we're going to do to try to make that happen. I feel like there has to be some sense of equalness there. If not, it's like you're asking me to be loyal without loyalty.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that's so important for people to understand, is like, we're employees.
For sure.
At the end of the day, like, we're just an employee, and, we've created a really, really great team here.
Yes.
But, for example, I don't know if we can talk about this, but Lenny's just transferring, right? Sure. I want Lenny to be happy.
Absolutely.
And I think the coaches want Lenny to be happy. And if the transfer portal didn't exist, Lenny's stuck here.
Yep.
When he doesn't want to be here.
Right.
And that makes us not as good, and that makes him not as good.
100%.
And I don't, and I think that, like, what's best for all of sports, in a way, not all of sports, but like, obviously I think that, like, this whole transfer portal thing needs to be corralled, because there is guys just doing it for money.
Jumping
for money,
exactly.
jumping. But, Kyle Berwick last year transfers back to North Dakota State.
Yep.
The coaches let him do it because it was the right thing to do.
For sure.
Right? He wouldn't have been able to do that a couple of years ago.
Right.
And so I just think that, like...
Yeah, I agree.
And, like, the name, image, and likeness, like, I think that the getting paid part, the crazy numbers we're hearing, I think that that's not sustainable. It's not going to last for forever. But, like, just being able to be like, I can make a YouTube channel and potentially make money off of it.
Exactly.
I couldn't do that 3 years ago. That's crazy. I could create Like I could make money, but I technically couldn't make money because of who I was.
Yes, that's the part people forget, right? We're not just talking about, and it gets messed up. We're talking about, oh, you can get X amount of dollars from Iowa
From some donor,
some donor from you whatever. We're not just talking about that because that is a bit crazy, but there is something to that too. The university is making money, and they're whatever. But the bigger thing is that you can make T-shirts, you can do these things, and still be okay and not get in trouble for it.
Yeah. So like my father-in-law has done a really good job with his job market that he's in, and his name carries the weight, right?
Yeah.
And he can use his name
Yeah.
to get, to leverage to get to another place or wherever. Prior to 4 years ago, no wrestler could do that. No wrestler could be like, well, you can use my name in this camp so that way more people go to the camp. Technically, that was illegal.
Wild.
And it's like, technically, you couldn't, like I said, make a T-shirt or YouTube channel or do an advertisement. And so
Right.
it's kind of like we were in prison of like, well, actually, the University of Nebraska owns my name.
Yeah.
kinda messed
That
up.
is messed up. And again, we forget about that.
Because they could use my money. They could use my name. I mean,
for sure.
They could be like, oh, look, Brock Hardy is going to be at this duel or whatever.
Yes.
Not for wrestling, but like Dylan Raiola is going to be, at this meet and greet, and they're going to
Yes.
make money off of it. But Dylan Raiola wasn't 5 years ago going to get anything from it.
Yeah. That had to change for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we are exactly on the same page for that.
For sure needs to be corralled, but
For sure. Because I think we're also in the other side of it where donors feel like they have control. I gave this much money, I can say and do what I want, and that's bad.
and they can probably leverage coaches behind the scenes that we don't know
sure.
about and stuff like that.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we'll move on from there. But I just wanted your opinion. I think we're very much on the same page with that. Just a few questions here. What does discipline mean to you? What does the word discipline mean to you?
Discipline. I feel like that is a really, really. I've talked a lot about discipline. I think discipline means a certain level of. How do I explain this without using the word?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You got internet there. Can you fact check me? Is it originally from the word discipline is related to disciple, right?
Yes. I've heard that. Yes.
It's like I would consider it a coherent or like a following of the laws to, the honorable way, I guess, in a way. So like
Yes. I know exactly what you're saying. It does say that discipline from the Bible, and yes, and like that. Yeah, disciple.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like an example of discipline, I have created a certain diet and I'm going to, follow it in the sense that strong discipline means I don't break. I don't waver in times of, it being hard to do the right thing, right?
Yeah. I like that. And I like to ask the question because it means something different to every person. But we always say it takes discipline. And I'm like, what does that mean? You know? We throw a lot of words around in life and that, but most people don't understand what they're saying or even mean what they're saying. And I also believe that you have to understand certain things. Like I need to know my goals and particularly the details of those things before I can truly accomplish anything. If not, it's just kind of aimlessly moving, in a direction. I also know that faith is a big part of your life. How has faith affected your wrestling in your life?
Yeah. Life a lot.
Yeah. Life. For sure.
I think that faith has affected my wrestling. One, there's a certain level of discipline that comes from faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well as a certain level of belief and I think the word discipline is what I want to use in the sense that in my faith I've had to walk forward without the knowledge of without the perfect knowledge of something, right?
Yeah.
I had to go on a mission when I didn't have the strongest testimony. And when I went on this mission, there was a lot of days that I was like, obviously you have moments of questioning your own testimony. And so we're questioning, should I be here? And, we always talk about in the church is like, sometimes following God is like walking through fog, right? You can't see always 4 steps ahead. but you can see where you can take your next step.
Yeah.
And he wants you to keep taking your steps forward. And so, you know, in certain levels, that's how wrestling, that's how training, that's how, you know, life obviously is. And so, like, you know, sometimes you can't see into the future with wrestling. I can't see whether I'm going to be a national champ next year.
Right.
But I know the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
And so I have to just keep, you know, having this faith and the discipline in my own training and my own actions to get there.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's great stuff. Who are your heroes?
Outside of the obvious, I'm gonna say my father's my hero, and my mother, and you know I'll yeah, and then you know I'll put does Jesus Christ count as a hero? Can I count him in there?
Absolutely.
No, I think that my parents did so much for me, and in so many ways they paved this path that I'm on. And then with Jesus, you know, he was perfect. And I think that so many times we think about that and we just forget about the fact of how he was perfect.
Mm.
You know, when we say perfect, we're like, oh, you know, he had no sin. And that's true. But I think about like the perfection in that he loved everyone.
Yeah.
And that he cared about everyone. And those are the things that I think about, and I go, how I could be better, right? I'll make a comment about someone that's mean, and I'll sit and it'll eat at me.
Yeah.
And so I just think that like those are the ways that I sit and think about how he was perfect.
Yeah, that's a great thing, because you do kind of like you immediately think about the sin. He didn't sin, but you don't think about the relationship side of him that was perfect. The friendship side of it was perfect. The son part of it was, just all those things. Yeah, I mean, that's a perspective that I've really not considered. You know, I've been in ministry forever, but I've always just defaulted to he's a perfect man, never sinned. You know? But that's the humanity side of perfection is very important. You know, not just the God side of perfection, because he's always perfect.
Yeah,
that's good. I like that. If you're using this time and you're speaking to those people that supported you, you know, your family, your wife, and all those people, your coaches of the past, that's gotten you to this place of where you are, what do you want to say to them?
I mean, I would want them to know that without them, I am not here, right? I think that there's so much that I can attribute to every single person, you know, that has been somewhat associated with my life getting me here, even in negative ways, right?
Sure.
Like I had a really bad companion on my mission that I think made me a better person.
Yeah.
But, you know, Courtney sacrifices so much to, you know, help me. And like, you know, she wants me to win more than I think I want to win. And she does so good at, while you see her going crazy in the stands, she does such a good job of being so calm and, you know, such a good place to find home when when I need calm. And like I said, my parents, I would not be here without them. You know, my dad had a belief that I needed to lose. And so he was like, I'll drive you. I'll change your weight class. I'll move you up a age division because I think that it's important that you lose.
Man, that's big.
And then, you know, my mom, you know, this talk that I just had about kindness, you know, my mom cared so much. And I think that there's a certain level of like, it comes from, you know, caring about what others think. But I think that she cared so much about what other people, like a certain level of empathy that I tried to emulate from her. And then my high school coaches, my club coaches, you know, my current coaches, you know, every single one of them have created what they see, right?
Yeah.
I'm a reflection of their greatness.
Wow. Yeah, that's good, man. That's real good. The thing you said there about your dad, and I think all that's good stuff that you said, but about your dad there, that he created opportunities to fail safely, which is awesome, because as a parent, you know, I was my son's coach, and I remember wanting him to have hard matches and good matches, but I also remember wanting to protect him and make him feel good. You know, so I know that sometimes maybe I went the other direction. I wanted him to have the wins, you know, for himself, you know, but I think, but I always preach to my kids that I wanted them to have the ability to succeed, but the safety to fail. And that way they could fail inside the umbrella in which God has created with me as their father, so that they can grow. That's huge, though. It's huge. And it's so cool that you had that dad that said failing's needed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great life lesson for everybody, for sure. Kind of going off of that, if you're writing the book, I'm writing the book of Fighting for Success, and it has the Brock Hardy chapter. What do you want people to remember about who you are as a champion and your success, and how to actually create that success in their own life?
Yeah. I've always said, so I remember like being good at wrestling young, but I remember always saying is that I don't want people to remember me by the accolades of wrestling, right? Like I want people to remember my success was Brock Hardy was a truly good person. And Brock Hardy, truly embodied what I liked about wrestling. And so success to me will not be the perfect record or the perfect accolades, but rather success is I achieved the goal, or I achieved a certain level of, how do I put this? I achieved what Brock Hardy's best would have been, right? I don't think that I'm Jordan Burroughs. I don't think that, I'm even Cale Sanderson or any of those, but, whoever Brock Hardy's end goal is supposed to be, I think the level of success will be measured off of what percent of I got the best out of that person, right? Yeah. Like, did I make it to 100% in being the best Brock Hardy?
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. It's good stuff. Switching back just to wrestling real fast, and then we're about to wrap this thing up. But if you were putting together the Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, who would that be?
Can it be American? Do you want all?
I think I give people the freedom to do what they want. Some people stay straight to American because we talk about Mount Rushmore. Some people go international.
I'll go American because that is true. It's Mount Rushmore. If we were talking about like I don't know if there's not a world monument.
Right.
7 Wonders of the World.
There you go.
I think the Mount Rushmore of wrestling.
I might change mine to 7 Wonders of the World of wrestling because Flo's jumping on my Mount Rushmore and getting people asking that question. So I'm going to have to change it because they're copying my stuff. So anyways,
yeah. That's a future thing. 7 Wonders of the World. You have to find 7 countries. I'll say, I think that being from Utah, who I tried to emulate all growing up, and who to this day is still doing incredible things at Penn State. Cale Sanderson has to be on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
I think that as much as I dislike Iowa, just the level of what he did for the sport in all aspects, you'd have to put Dan Gable.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of being boring because I'm just going to say the big
That's
four.
okay. I mean, it's...
And then I think you'd have to put John Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, Tervel was sending me stuff of John Smith.
He's incredible.
So good. So good. And then, like I said, he did great things at Oklahoma State. And then lastly, the current, you have to put Jordan Burroughs.
For sure.
And, there's just, it's going to be hard to keep adding to Mount Rushmore. There's a reason why there's no new presidents on there.
Yeah.
But, it is incredible to see that David Taylor's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time.
For sure.
Kyle Dake's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time.
Sure.
Jason Nolf is so freaking good at wrestling.
So good.
And Jordan Burroughs was that guy at that weight.
Yeah.
That whole time.
Yeah.
And I mean he's incredible. And then on top of that, just his own ambassadorship, is that a word? His own.
Yeah, I like it. If it isn't.
Yeah, like his ambassador aspect of the sport is so incredible.
So good.
No one is, able to, Cale is Michael Jordan in the sense that, he is a lot more reserved, closed off. He does his business and he wins. There's a certain level of, JB just goes and talks to anybody.
Everyone, dude.
And he does such an incredible job of that. And so, I think that's a perfect Mount Rushmore. There's no other way to do it. And it's just, they are all there for their reasons.
Yeah. Dude, that's a great list. Is there 4 presidents on the Mount Rushmore?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we've been...
Lincoln, Roosevelt. Oh, gosh. how do I forget? Oh, George.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then is it Jefferson? I think Jefferson.
Okay, because I think some of us thought it was 5, and we've been given 5 sometimes. So
I'll give you a 5th just
yeah, there you
because
go.
those first 4 are
it's the
easy.
reason why we do that is because we think there might be another one up there someday. So yeah, the honorable mention.
Honorable mention.
Yeah.
That is. Let me go through the decades.
It gets sticky too because you're like, you know, who do you put on there? I mean, there's a lot of, you know, like, I mean, like,
I'll put Kyle Snyder on there.
I say the Snyder's tough.
Kyle Snyder. I mean, he's one of the youngest
Yeah.
champs, and he's continued to do it.
Oh yeah.
And once again, he's different than the other four, I should
Yeah.
say. Like, he is like he doesn't seem like there's no like, he's not necessarily like the ambassador that JB is in the sense that like he goes and talks to people, but you talk to Kyle Snyder and you go, this is one of the nicest people I've ever met.
For sure. How does and this is just a relative, I guess a recent biased question. How does a Carter Starachi?
So people dislike Carter as a whole. People dislike him. I don't.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that he is
His antics.
His antics.
Yeah.
He's doing it right. He's doing
sure.
it for show. I don't necessarily believe that he's like that, but even if he is, like, he is. There's a certain, people can call him boring. You know, he doesn't score as much as in his matches. There's a certain level of control that he has that is so incredible to see.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you know, off the mat stuff, we need that in a way.
Yep.
Right? Like, he is there's certain guys that you have to, and I applaud him because I couldn't do it. I care too much about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
He, you know, he wants to be the villain.
Yeah.
And that gets people watching, right? Because
For
now
sure.
everyone is tuning in because
Yeah.
they want to see Carter Starachi lose.
100%. I just, you know, when the Mount Rushmore stuff, it's like obviously the other guys accomplished stuff in the international level, stuff like that. But man, 5-timer, man,
5 times, and at a very tough weight.
very tough weight, very tough. 2 weights.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true. He
Yeah,
beat a national champ who I think was one of the best national champs last year.
for sure. Last, you know, kind of fun question here is: we're foodies, man. Wrestlers are foodies. What's your go-to?
I love food so much, and I have a hot take that Italian food isn't the best food.
Okay.
That's a hot take in the wrestling world because there's so many you know,
Yeah.
PA guys
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are like, Italian
Gotta
food's
have
the
my
best.
grandma's. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you know, with spaghetti and meatball, blah, blah, blah. No, Mexican food's the best.
Let's go.
And I think that birria tacos are,
That's just your go-to.
that's the best thing. Like, I love every aspect of Mexican food,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But birria tacos are like, something about this, you know, you dip in it, something about the cheese and the beef.
It is kind of perfect. Yeah.
So good. Give me a little rice and beans and some birria tacos, and
You're good.
I'm set.
Yeah. Yeah. You like junk food? You like sweets?
Love sweets.
Yeah.
Love sweets. I have big sweet problem.
Yeah. You got to go to?
Reese's Fast Break.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, if we're talking just like a candy bar, Reese's Fast Break. Favorite, like,
Overall,
sweet.
you ice cream guy?
I like ice cream.
Yeah, but it's not.
I like brownies. I like cookies. I don't think I have a preferred.
You just
Cheesecake, probably.
Cheesecake's
I
great.
love cheesecake.
just straight up, or
Just
you like the flavored cheesecakes?
straight up with like the raspberry jam
so
on top.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Like the classic.
But you're not going to like Cheesecake Factory and getting like a Godiva chocolate.
No,
What's the order at the Cheesecake Factory?
I hate Cheesecake Factory.
No chance. Like
So Courtney's family loves the Cheesecake Factory. We always go there for someone's birthday.
yeah,
I get paralysis of analysis looking at that menu.
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Too many things.
Yeah.
Get the calories off the
It's-
freaking menu.
who
I don't even
cares?
see that it's
We're at the
2,000
We're at the
calories.
Cheesecake Factory. We're not counting.
Yeah, you're like, what are you doing?
yeah.
No,
yeah.
I definitely get paralysis of like,
Too much.
there's so much. No,
Yeah.
the food is good there.
Yeah.
I just hate it because of the menu.
No, I'm very similar, and I would say that there is better cheesecake, but I mean, there's a lot to choose from there. And I'm with you though. I'm like, I want a simplified menu. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only that, but like just
It's a lot going on. Yeah. So one of the last things I want to do here is I always pray about who I'm having on the show. And I just kind of like speak, what God gives me over a person. And usually I ask God for a character because it's kind of like the easiest way for us to, and maybe it's a word for you. Maybe it's just something to think about. And I don't really know you as a person. I interact with you, but we've not spent time together. So as I was praying about you, God gave me the word in the character David. And I was asking why. And he gave me kind of a timeline of David. And he's like, okay, so there was this preparation time in David's life, right? And he was the shepherd boy. And but it took that for him to be able to be ready for what God was calling him to. And we all know that story. But a lot of emphasis gets put on the fact that he went and he fought Goliath, right? And then we have this epic battle between these two people. And he overcomes that battle and he becomes the champion, right? And we kind of, in the church, we talk about that one battle a lot. And you would almost think that that's where he becomes king and that's the end of the story, but it's not. And there is this time in his life where he's running and he's struggling and the king is actually trying to kill him. And it takes this whole process for David to become what exactly he's supposed to become and he's called to. And as I was thinking about that, and God was giving that to me, he's like, Brock has spent time in the field as a shepherd. He is fighting the giants and he's winning. And he is, in a lot of, ways being crowned this champion. But there's a much bigger call on your life than just beating the giant. The actual call is going to come through, like we talked about, the struggle, the fight, but there is a kingdom in which God has called you to. And that kingdom needs you to be placed in that position. And that it's not just about the championships. Those are just stepping stones to the greater call on your life. And that when you feel like, you're beat up, you're struggling, going through the stuff, that God is preparing you for that position. And not to forget that once we beat the giant. Right. If when you win the national championship, everybody thinks that's the pinnacle. That's just a stepping stone to the kingdom. So I hope that resonates with you, man. God's got massive call in your life, and I appreciate it. I'm here for it. We're huge fans.
Thank you so much. That does resonate. My middle name is David.
Really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's great.
You said David, and I was like,
yeah. No, I had no idea.
I loved that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. And what I like about David's stories too is that even the people closest to him didn't understand, right? And that there was something inside David that he knew, and it was a calling and a purpose. And he was drawn from the inside out, that he overcame and became something that seemed evidently, it just seemed impossible. But he knew it. Right. And I think the heart of the king lives inside you. And I can't wait to see it all come to fruition.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to make sure to not stand on my balcony in the future.
Especially in Brazil.
Oh, yeah, especially in Brazil.
Yeah. Now listen, again, God didn't highlight any of the faults of David. He just highlighted those victories. So that we'll stay on that side of David.
No, I love that. Thank you. And I loved that. I love the imagery of that and the now I'm gonna have to go read about David today
for sure.
I love that.
Good, man. Good. Well, dude, we love you here. We're fans of the Hardy tribe, and we just want you to continue to fight for success, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was great.
Awesome, brother. That's it. It's a wrap.
Sweet.
You're the man, dude. You crushed it.